For today, we are going to talk about some HR insights for 2023. I think it's so exciting that we get to start our year together. We regularly have webinars almost every month, and I see a lot of familiar names here. So why don't we do this? Let me know if you're new here, you're new with us in Elizha Corpus Consulting, or if you've been here before. Just put it in the chat. So if you've been here before, say hi. If this is your first time, say it's your first time. I'd love to see how many people we have here. Oh, I see Jan is new. Hello. Lots of first timers. Amazing. Oh, wow. Okay, that's so good. I see a lot of you are first timers with us. So don't worry, I'm going to introduce myself so you get to know me. And then for some people, I do see a lot of familiar names. Hello, I'm glad you're all here again. Kita na naman tayo for the new year. All right, for those who have been attending with us before, you know the drill. We always have ground rules because this is a great way for us to set how we will interact with each other. For today, we are going to commit to being here. I know you're all busy. We all have a lot of things to do, but we are here because we want to learn. And so we will commit to giving our presence to this webinar. We are also going to listen to understand. I'm going to tell you now, there are lots of different data points that I'm going to share, lots of different studies, and there might be some concepts that are new to you. So please just listen, keep your ears open, and of course, engage with us. The best way to learn is by participating. Answer in the chat like what you're all doing already. Thank you so much. That's the best way for us to get to know each other and for me to know if you have more questions that I would need to address. All right. And of course, let's do our best to contribute to psychological safety. We all have different levels of HR experience. Yung iba sa atin, I know interested lang sa HR but are not yet HR professionals. And then for some of us, I'm pretty sure you're more seasoned already. You've been in HR for a while. So let's just help each other out and create an environment where we can all learn from each other. Let me introduce myself, especially because there are a lot of new people here. You can call me Elizha. Kahit wala ng miss, kahit wala ng ma'am or coach, just Elizha is okay. We like to keep things pretty casual here in ECC. So my journey in HR has been starting ever since I was young. My dad has always been in HR, but I figured I needed to set my foundations. I did my master's in human resources and labor relations at Michigan State University. As you can see here, these are some of my classmates that I love from the program. They are all in different Fortune 500 companies now all around the world. After my master's in HR, I worked with Microsoft in their headquarters in Redmond, Washington. I lived in Seattle, Washington for a bit. I was with their global learning and development team. Very lucky to be there because my work was directly related to the culture transformation that the company was taking part of. A lot of the lessons that I learned about HR, consulting, the future of work, I got from Microsoft. And until now, ang dami pa rin nilang research on those topics. So a lot of those I will be able to share with you today as well. And of course, in 2018, I decided to come back home here to the Philippines. And I started my own consulting practice, very creatively called Elizha Corpus Consulting. It's just my name. I work with different companies here in the Philippines and internationally as well. We specialize on topics like culture transformation, leadership development, and of course, diversity and inclusion. And with that, that's who I am. I hope we can get to know each other better. Yung mga laging nandito, ayan, nakikilala ko na sila kasi lagi kami magkakasama every month. So the new timers, first timers, I hope we can also look more with each other in the next few months. All right. With that, let's go ahead and discuss the Mentimeter questions that you answered earlier. Earlier, I asked you to rate these statements according to how you agree with them. So first statement, my current company or organization is equipped for the future of work. So this scale goes from 1 to 6, and it looks like we're halfway through at 3.8, all right? And then it's the same score for thinking about your HR department and how ready you are for the strategic work ahead. Same score, almost, roughly, for HR professionals. Very interesting, right? If we think about the future of work, we talk about it all the time. But the results that you're seeing in front of you, they are actually not so different from the results that we see globally. In a lot of companies, employees, HR professionals, and the leaders, they feel like there's still a lot to be done for us to be ready for the future. Kaya tayo nandito today, right? Because we want to find ways to start getting ready for that future. We want to make 2023 the year where we put those foundations in place. So great job, everyone. Thank you for answering the Mentimeter. Let's get back into our PowerPoint so we can start discussing. Why do we talk about this now? Why is it so important and so cool that there are so many of us here today? If we think about it, this is the moment for HR and people analytics. This quote is from a podcast called Digital HR Leaders Podcast. And the guests were 𝗶𝗺𝗃𝗃𝗃, who is like the father of modern management. He is one of the biggest consultants, researchers in the industry. Diane Gerson is also a consultant with Harvard Business Review and was a former CHRO of Fortune 500 companies. They said that this generation of HR leaders, we are in that point of history where we get to define the workplace of the post-industrial era. No pressure, pero yan yung responsibility na nasa ating lahat today. We have such a great role to play in what the workplace will look like in the future. So what are we going to do today in this webinar, and how will that help you towards that future? Number one, for today, we are going to discuss the emerging trends and insights in the HR world that we can leverage for 2023. Take note, we are not going to make predictions. So please just know na yung mga sinishare natin today, hindi siya predictions of what we know will happen, because we can never be sure. But there are lots of studies that have been done globally with a very, very big sample size. And so what we do is we take insights from all these different studies and try to see what we can apply to our current context, especially here in the Philippines or in surrounding regions. All right, so hindi tayo manghuhula today. We are looking at insights that we have analyzed from a lot of data in different studies around the world. And the next is, of course, we are going to identify actionable strategies that will allow us to utilize those insights. Insights are great, but if we cannot find ways to apply that in our work, they're useless, diba? So syempre, we are going to walk away from today with some practical tips that you can do, you can apply in your work. Okay, and with that, let's take a look at 2023. Let's the chat, everyone. As early as now, I know it's only been 24 days since 2023 started. Let me in the chat. What have you noticed? How is 2023 different from 2022? One word, one phrase, what are some of those things that immediately we're already seeing, even just in the first month? Okay? Yeah, a lot of people are excited. It's a new beginning. Exactly, because more jobs are on site. I was so surprised because last December was the first month since the pandemic where I had more in-person engagements than online engagements. So bumabalik na talaga yung mga tao sa office, or kung hindi man sila bumabalik sa office permanently, they really are trying hybrid, or they're finding ways to get together. They're finding kickoffs, outings, events where people can come together. I think last December also, we saw that so many companies had in-person Christmas parties, di ba? So yung ganun pala, kita na natin that people are taking advantage of this adjustment or this switch from being so scared of the pandemic to having a more manageable grasp on it. 2023, we can think about it as the in-between year. Why do we say that? If we look back, 2020, 2021, 2022, those were years where the pandemic was still very, very high up on the list of priorities. A lot of people, whether at work or in personal life, we were all still very scared of the pandemic. So granted, we still have the pandemic, right? We can't say na tapos na yung COVID kasi meron pa namang COVID. But what we're seeing now is people are not so scared of it anymore. A lot of people are vaccinated, depending on the country, of course, but here in the Philippines, we're not as bad as other countries in terms of vaccination. So what we're seeing is we're sort of in that adjustment period where we went from HR people just trying to survive from the pandemic to now we're adjusting to this new environment where the pandemic is manageable and we have to figure out what work will mean in that environment. When we think of 2023 as the in-between year, it's going from surviving to living. We survived the past few years, bare bones in terms of your workforce, right? Not knowing when you can see each other again, just trying our best with virtual work when we did not have the tools. Nowadays, we've adjusted a little bit. So many people are now used to Zoom. I don't even have to teach you where to do reaction buttons. You know where to find them. So we're used to a lot of these things, but we're not yet thriving. I say we're living because we're still figuring it out. We are figuring out how to live with the pandemic. We are figuring out how to live in this new world where hybrid and virtual and in-person, they're all meshing together to form what the future will be. Another way we can think about this in-between is it's a world that is seemingly full of contradictions. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. There's this study from a venture capital firm, and what they said was 80% of jobs around the world are actually deskless. What does that mean? That means that 80% of jobs around the world you cannot do virtually. Kasi hindi sila computer jobs. So these are manual service jobs. But at the same time, we are at an environment where everyone is demanding for more flexible work arrangements. Everyone wants work from home or work from anywhere. To see the seeming paradox there, so many people cannot do virtual work, but also so many people want virtual work where they can take their work anywhere they go. That's one example of a paradox. Another seeming contradiction that we see is everyone's telling us to slow down, right? Relax, make sure that you are managing your mental health. But at the same time, there are so many things we have to keep up with. Now that companies are getting back into the rhythm of work after pandemic, there are more expectations, more goals, and people want us to reach those goals. Again, right? How do you slow down when you have to keep up and the world is going so fast? So think about that. I wonder if you can think of other contradictions that you observe in the world. Let me know. I have another one. Think about how these days we encourage fluidity and not having a lot of labels for the different things that we experience because we want to be comfortable with uncertainty. But we also have so many labels for the experiences we have at work. Just in the past month, we've had quiet quitting, quiet thriving, rage applying is the new one that's getting famous. So think about that, right? We want to be uncertain, but we label everything and then we try to make sense of everything. A lot of contradictions exist in the world we are in. 2023 is also the in-between year because we are going into freezing our new culture and identities. If you research change management models, I'm going to type a name here in the chat. There's a change management model by Kurt Lewin, okay? Kurt, Lewin. Kurt Lewin's change management model says that whenever there's culture change or any kind of change, an unfreezing happens, okay? And then you have to freeze the new behaviors that you learn in the period in between. Right now, the pandemic forced us to unfreeze a lot of our behaviors and learn a lot of new ones as well. And so in 2023, now that medyo stable na, we are getting to that point where we have to freeze the behaviors, freeze the things that we want. The things that we choose to freeze, the behavior systems, practices that we choose to freeze, these are the ones that will form our new culture and identity moving forward. Okay? That's why 2023 is an in-between year and there's so much opportunity for all of us. All right, now that we have that term in mind and we've set that big picture, let's try to get into some of the insights that we're seeing. But let me know first. Let's go back to our Mentimeter. It's the same link as what you had earlier. Again, this is anonymous. What was the most challenging people or HR-related concern that you had to deal with in 2022? Tingnan natin kung yung concerns nyo, nag-a-align siya dun sa mga sinasabi ng researchers na mangyayari for 2023. All right? So go ahead, kahit phrase, kahit one sentence. What was the most challenging people and HR-related concern that you had to deal with in 2022? I am putting the Mentimeter link in the chat, so you can go ahead and click on that. I'm seeing some people in the chat instead of Menti. That's okay as well. So promotion, employee retention, looking for work from home setup jobs. Yes. So even if we tried out the hybrid work during the pandemic, hindi pa rin siya ganun ka common, or not all companies have it. All right. Multi-diversity, great. On Mentimeter, people are saying mga AWOL. Yeah, that's true. Absenteeism, right? Especially when it's related to health concerns, mental health concerns, even harder to talk to with employees sometimes. Great. Organizational restructures, salary distortion. All right. We still have, yes, so things like attrition, engagement, very classic HR concerns that we look into. Okay, health and safety, even more important compared to before. All right, so great job, everyone. Let's see if these concerns are lining up with what people are saying will happen for 2023. So let's go into the HR insights that we need to be paying attention to. I have 3 here that we will talk about this morning, okay? Number 1, HR insight. Technology is in all industries. I'm going to show you the next slide, and sometimes it's a little bit sad to think of. Starting late last year, even up to today, we have been seeing a lot of tech companies doing layoffs. And their layoffs are huge layoffs. These are not just 100 or 500 people. These are layoffs, sometimes going up to 12,000 people. Think about that, right? January 20, Google laid off 12,000 people. That's 12,000 individuals plus their families and anyone else depending on them. I mean, that's crazy to think about. Last January 18, Microsoft did the same thing, 10,000 layoffs. I honestly, I haven't checked my LinkedIn in the past few weeks because some of my colleagues from before, they got laid off. And it's so sad to see everyone grappling with that and thinking about that. Just today, Spotify announced they are laying off 6% of their global workforce. This is something that's happening in tech companies all around the world. One reason is the economic downturn. If we think about it, we are not doing so well globally. But another reason is, especially in the tech company, if one company does it, there's a chain reaction because a lot of people have to keep up. And the only way to keep up sometimes is to try to mimic the practices of the others. Is that a good thing? Honestly, no, but that's one of the ways that they can survive, especially when things are not looking so good economy-wise. So, very sad news, very true, but now we have to think about what will this teach us about the workforce 2023 and even beyond. What this tells us is digital jobs could be moving to other industries. Ang tech ngayon, hindi lang pang tech companies. Ang pagiging high-tech, it's not just for Google or Microsoft or Amazon, etc. It's something that will be expected in every single industry moving forward. That's because we're already starting to see the revolution happen in that space. When it comes to healthcare, nowadays you can get a doctor through an app. That's technology. When it comes to banking, I don't think I've gone to a bank for a long time now to withdraw money because everything is just on an app. That's technology again. So think about it. Nowadays, all of these industries will need technological skills. What you're seeing in front of you is a screenshot from Josh Bersin 2023 predictions webinar. This data is showing us that since 2020, if you look at how payroll has changed and what companies are paying for, you see that information is pretty much the one with the biggest rise. So a lot of workers in the information/technology fields are also getting compensated in industries outside of what we traditionally know as technology. Okay? What is that telling us for HR? We should know and we should recognize that tech innovations are important for all industries. It's not just for tech companies anymore. So think about it. If you're a construction company, for example, how is technology affecting construction? Meron bang mga innovations or revolutions happening in your space that require technology? Maybe that's something you can look into and think about. And so why do we pay attention? We pay attention because companies are expanding their reach and going beyond their traditional industries. Disney is not just an entertainment company and a theme park, if you will. They have a streaming service as well. Amazon also has a healthcare portion nowadays. They do telemed consults. I want to challenge everyone here. Give me examples of companies in the Philippines that have diversified beyond their traditional industry. So mag-isip tayo, ano yung mga companies na madami silang iba-ibang ginagawa, madaming iba-ibang products, madaming iba-ibang services. Let me know in the chat. Are there some examples coming to mind for you? Yes, okay. GCash, Sandwich, PNG. Amazing. Let's go with the GCash example. Think about Globe, right? We just know Globe as your SIM card, what you use for your telco. It's a telco company, but Globe actually has GCash. Globe also has Consulta MD. So they have all these ventures in different industries. That's important to understand because having tech skills is something that can help with that expansion. All of these companies are using technology to expand beyond what they are used to doing. Okay? We also see that in a few years, technological skills will fill the job marketplace. It's not just the people who are getting laid off from tech companies. It's also the young people who are having this sort of technology and innovation focus in schools. In schools around the world, STEM, science, technology, that's a field of study that's being emphasized for students. And so as these students grow up, they have the tech skills that companies can leverage, and the marketplace will be filled with these people that we can hire, we can partner with them to grow our companies for the future of work and the innovations that we need. Also, now because these tech skills are needed, digital and data related skills will almost be an expectation if it's not already. Syempre, ang reality niyan, kapag important yung technological skills, kailangan the current employees, the current workforce like us here, kailangan sumasabay tayo. It doesn't mean we all have to be coders or programmers or developers. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying here is we have to be aware of the trends. We have to understand where it's going. Even just a baseline or foundational understanding is great so that we know the environment we're working in. It also means that in the field you're in, you have to find a way to digitalize your skills. We're in HR. Most of us are in HR. We're not saying that you should go study software engineering next. What we're saying here is think of what does digital mean in HR? What are the HR technologies that I need to understand so that my traditional HR skills can be used or expanded in that digital space? Okay, so that's what we're saying here, and really those are the reasons for paying attention to this rise in technology. All right, HR insight number 2. Integration is the name of the game. According to this market research company called IDC, most companies lose 20 to 30% of their revenue annually due to inefficiencies. And inefficiencies, that doesn't just mean manual operations or systems that take up too much time. Inefficiencies can also mean miscommunication, not being able to find the information you need at a timely manner. It might also mean not having the right people to do the job. What do y'all think? What are other examples of inefficiencies in companies that you can think of? Doesn't have to be with your company, don't worry. Give me examples of inefficiencies. Ano yung mga bagay na nagpapasayang, nagpapahirap sa trabaho natin araw-araw? All right, yeah, decision making, or maybe to make it more specific, clunky decision making, right? When things are too bureaucratic, lots of different levels of decisions before you get to a final decision. Yep, that's an inefficiency. Miscommunication, no ATS/CRM, yes, systems wise, right? A lot of companies are still in the process of trying to get those systems. Okay, lack of SOPs, exactly. People don't know how to operate. So every single thing they do, they have to start from scratch because there's no SOP or there are no guiding principles that we can look at day to day. All right, lots of inefficiencies, right? In one of our studies that we did here in the Philippines with 2 local companies, 2 different companies, we did a learning needs analysis for them. The things that you are saying in the chat, it reflects exactly what they said in their learning needs analysis. We asked the participants to fill in the statement. I struggle to do my job when what? What we found out was, for the most part, the thing they struggle with the most is the process of work. Nahihirapan tayo pag walang boundaries, walang clarity, o sino bang gagawa nito? Sino bang ka-work ko para matapos yan? Anong gagamitin ko para matapos yan? What system do I have to log into? These are the things that we saw from our learning needs analysis. It's making people have a hard time at work. And so what now? what this is telling us is when we think about HR, we cannot just think of the functions that we are in. You may be in recruiting, L&D, Comp and Ben, ER, IR, whatever. But 2023 and beyond, you cannot just think of your job as that one function. HR is now all interconnected. The processes and systems that make work inefficient are all interconnected, which means the solutions to them are also interconnected. HR has a unique position in the company to look across every single department. As a support function, HR has a representative in all of the different functions of the company. That means we can potentially understand ano yung nangyayari sa buong kumpanya. And imagine the power if you can integrate all of that information. That is where we want to take HR. The screenshot in front of you, this is from, again, that same webinar of Josh Bersin. If you all don't know, Josh Bersin is also one of the biggest names in terms of researching for HR and people practices. I suggest actually, why don't you go and I'll type the name. You should type Josh Bersin 2023 predictions for HR on Google because sometime this week he is releasing his long report on those predictions. I think this webinar that I attended, it was just like a preview, but I know this week they are publicly releasing that. So make sure you sign up and get your copy. Okay, so enough about that. What we're seeing here in front of us is a mapping of sorts. It's telling us the web of different HR capabilities, HR maybe projects, initiatives, think about it in that way, that we as HR professionals should be paying attention to. It's all interconnected. Mas mahirap siya in a sense, pero ang laki ng opportunity. Because if you do something in one part of the company, it has ripple effects in many other parts of the company. And so to summarize all of that, integration is the name of the game. Integrating systems will go beyond the operations department. Usually it's your ops or sometimes IT department that gets to be in charge of all of these systems integrations. As HR, we have an opportunity to say, look, there are lots of people elements in these integrations, and it would be great for us to get experience in those kinds of initiatives. So why pay attention? First, we cannot afford to lose resources due to inefficiencies. So economy-wise, people are saying that the Philippines isn't so bad. We're actually doing better than some of our peers in Southeast Asia. But inflation-wise, I don't know about you, pero nararamdaman nyo rin siguro yun, di ba? We can't afford the same things that we can before. So let me know, sa inyo ba, do you think mas dumami yung budget nyo for your initiatives in the past year or before the pandemic? Let's get a quick sense here. Did your budgets get bigger or smaller in maybe in the past year? So I can share with you my observations from my clients, but I wonder, what is it in yours, okay? Okay, for some it got bigger, but let me see. Let's get some more answers so we can get a good feel of the mix we have. Yeah, so a lot of people said smaller. I'm going to tell you that in my observation with my clients, it's mostly smaller. Budgets got smaller, and that's because companies are kind of not liquid in terms of spending right now. We are in a very still uncertain world, and companies don't have that much to spend in terms of everything that we want to do. So, as HR people, makakatipid tayo if we learn how to integrate, if we learn how to use one initiative to ripple those positive effects on others. Okay. Also, it's important to integrate because personalization and customization cannot exist in chaotic systems. What do we mean by this? Nowadays, everyone wants customized solutions. Every single employee wants to say that I want a special package for my compensation, or can I select benefits, please? Because I want to know what applies to me and my situation. We also recognize that employees from different life stages have different needs. And so a lot of companies are actually thinking about more flexible compensation and benefits packages. Personalization, customization, all good. But how can you personalize and customize if you don't even know what your standards are? Di ba mas mahirap yun? Kung magulo yung mga processes nyo, paano nyo malalaman kung ano yung mga pwede nyo gawin at hindi pwede gawin, especially when the packages get bigger or more diverse? And so it's very important to integrate as early as now. It's a way to fix your systems so you can open up to more personalization and customization in the future. And then last, people can spot contradictions very, very fast, and they are actually quite vocal about it. Nowadays, it's so easy to look at what a company is doing. Companies are in the news. Your consumers, your employees, they see what's happening. And for people, everything is related. You have to be thinking about all of these things and what are the possible contradictions that you need to fix and align in your companies so you can have a better employer brand, especially for the people that you would want to hire in the future. Okay, so that's our insight. Number 2, integration is the name of the game. And now we head into our insight number 3. More is expected from work. What you're seeing in front of you is from Deloitte's Transitioning to the Future of Work and the Workplace study. In 2016, they asked 245 C-level leaders. So these are the topmost leaders of companies. They asked them, what impact does culture have on their organization and its ability to realize the mission and the vision? Okay, so again, they asked about essentially the importance of culture. In 2016, this is a good sign that a lot of leaders are saying culture is so important. If we look 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a lot of HR people would say, I need to convince my leaders that culture is important. So very different struggles from what we're seeing today. This is a good sign that leaders know culture is important. But we're in 2023 now, and it seems like employees still want to see more of that in action. Maybe in theory, we recognize and we know the importance of culture, but we're not seeing the effects of that on actions, systems, processes just yet. If we look at employee sentiment when it comes to work, it seems like they're not yet feeling that culture, that excitement, that meaning that we want them to get from work. 2023, there's a Qualtrics study on employee experience trends. This is a pretty good study. As you can see, the sample size is quite big. It's 21K across 27 countries. What this tells us is for employees, if you ask them how important work is in their life, 21% said that in the past few years, work became significantly less important in their lives. Okay, so what we're seeing here is there's this change or shift happening where work maybe is not as important in terms of how human beings see it as it used to be. So 21% was the jump that it did going down. For the most part, nothing has changed, was still the biggest at 37%. But if we think about it, 21% people saying that work became less significant is something that we have to think of as HR professionals. Why is work becoming less significant? Ano ba yung hinahanap nila? What are employees looking for? If we think about it, employees want organizations that connect people. Di ba joke sa atin yung pumapasok lang yung mga tao para magkwentuhan? Nowadays, the research is telling us that it shouldn't be a joke anymore because it's true. And we have to accept that people go to work because that's where they get social connection, especially for adults. This study, again, this one's a very good one. There's 20,000 sample size across 11 countries that Microsoft did for their work trend index study. What this says is social connection is what pushes people to commute to work rather than stay at home. Even if they have the option to work from home, they go to the office because they want to see their teammates. They want to see their colleagues. This study also said that 84% of employees, they are motivated if you promise them that they can socialize with their colleagues. And 85% are motivated if you tell them that they have some sort of team bonding activity. 73%, they are more likely to go to work if they have team members in the office. And 74% are more likely to go if their work friends or their work besties are in the office. If you leverage that social environment, you can get a lot done in terms of getting those connections and engagement. Next up, we want organizations that have equitable pay. Pay is still a very, very important part of work. I know that in the past few years, the discourse has been focused on purpose and meaning and all of that more, let's say, like HR emotional things. But let's not forget, pay is still a very important part of what we need to do as HR people. This study from Prudential, so just a quick caveat here, this one is with an American sample, but still it's a good indicator. So what this says is majority of workers, about 68%, they expect to get a raise this year. And most of those workers are expecting to get a raise from 1 to 5%. No need to share, but think about it. Sa inyo ba, kahit sa anecdotes lang, pag-usap nyo ng mga friends nyo or co-workers, are people expecting a raise as well? Or maybe not expecting, but they would want one. So we can see here, pay is still very important. In the Philippine setting, we do have a study that we did in 2021. It's called The Future of Work from the Future of Work, where we sampled 95 Filipinos aged 21 to 30. We told them to rank the elements that they value at work. And as we can see here, compensation and the benefits is still the #1 thing that they're looking for. So we cannot forget about that. Next up, we want organizations that value balance. Balance, especially if we think of what will promote health and well-being. So overall satisfaction with work-life balance, it actually decreased by 2 points year on year. So 2022 to 2023, we predict, or Qualtrics predicts, that there might be a decrease there, which means that as HR professionals, we have an opportunity to make sure that we're helping employees to keep that balance, especially as they tackle their physical and mental health. We want organizations that provide opportunities for growth. From a study from 𝗫𝗺, so 𝗫𝗺 is the Society for Human Resources and Management, and they based this on a study from the University of Phoenix. Again, pretty good sample size, but it's from the US, so just think about that. Take it with a grain of salt. So what they say is 68% of workers would stay with their employer if the employer made an effort to upskill them. Skills are so important. Using our Filipino-based study, we can also see that when it comes to being human-centered, Filipinos aged 21 to 30 include development as part of being human-centered. For our participants, they said that they know a company cares about its employees if binibigyan sila ng way to upskill, if nagbibigay ng training, learning, and development opportunities. So there's that connection being made in terms of how well you care for your employees and what development opportunities you give. That's the Philippine setting. We also want organizations that recognize societal issues. From that same Microsoft study of the new future of work, we can see that companies are ranking or rating the importance of giving back to communities, of volunteer activities, advocating for social justice. In this study, they asked people to compare how important it is from the past year to the current year. And what they saw was more important. These are very high ratings. So employees are looking for that from their employers. Next up, we want organizations that give a platform for purpose. From the same future of work study, as we can see here, being human-centered is also about creating a company that can be a platform for that purpose to be realized. Companies have to help individuals to verbalize their purpose and find ways to practice it. And then from McKinsey, the thing about this is when it comes to realizing purpose, we see that there's a gap between your managers or upper management and employees. There's a lot happening in the visual, but essentially to explain it, what this says is for upper management and executives, 85% of them, they agree that yes, I can make my purpose happen at work. But for frontline managers and frontline employees, 85% of them say, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I can do my purpose at work or if work provides me with a platform for that purpose. The difference is stark, which means that you have an opportunity to look at that frontline employee base. What is going on? How can we help them to see work as a platform for the purpose they want to realize? To summarize HR insight, more is expected from work. We spend so much time at work. We want to work to have meaning and to be a fulfilling venture. If you think about it, you spend more of your day at work than at home, or if you're at home, you spend more of your day doing work than maybe socializing with the people in your home. And so we want to find a way to make work meaningful and fulfilling kasi nga, ginagawa natin siya ng matagal. Ang sad naman kung matagal natin siya ginagawa and hindi natin gusto yung ginagawa natin. So let's find a way to put meaning in there. We have to pay attention because we are in the middle of a re-identification of what work means to humanity. Think about what we said earlier. 2023 is the in-between year. The behaviors that we settle on and decide on this year, these are the behaviors that will tell us what work is going to be about in the next few years. It sounds so cheesy and philosophical, but this is something that we have to grapple with these days. Okay, let me just turn off the annotations here. Great. All right. Also, companies are at the forefront of shaping those cultures and identities. Companies are closed systems for the most part. You can incentivize behaviors that you want to see through pay, through praise, intrinsic, extrinsic motivations. So really, companies can shape the behaviors that can help people, give them the skills that they need for the future of work. Like what we've been saying, now is the time to do something. We are in the in-between, and so we have to act as HR professionals. Now, lots of things people want from work. I want to get your thoughts on this. I have research that I'll share later on what some of the global companies think is the answer to this question, but what do you think? Is it fair to expect all of that from work? Is it fair to expect all of that from the companies that we are part of? No right or wrong answer. What do you think? To start, I'm going to give you my personal answer. So my personal answer is yes. But what do you all think? Is it fair that we're expecting all of that from the companies that we work with? Yeah, okay. Interesting. Neither yes or no. Okay. Like what I said, no right or wrong answer. So your opinion, it's up to you. Let me tell you what I'm starting to see from my different engagements. So for me, and personally for me, I think it's fair to expect all of that from work. Why? Because work is pretty much one of the most powerful entities in the world. Some corporations have earnings bigger than some small countries' GDPs. Some companies have so many employees worldwide, you could pretty much think of them as having citizens all around the globe. Some companies have such highly regulated systems and behaviors that they can make people do things or act in certain ways, for better or for worse. This clipping that you're seeing in front of you is from PwC. So PwC, way back in 2017, they worked with some futurists and researchers on a paper called The Competing Forces Shaping 2030. One of the biggest themes that they found is corporate is king. Corporations are still very much powerful entities in the world. Companies, organizations, these are still prevalent in the world that we live in. And so, diba, with bigger power comes bigger responsibility. That's why if companies have this much influence, they also have a responsibility to make something better out of it, right? So, yes, sometimes we can say that, binabayaran naman yung mga employees, diba? Dapat gawin na lang nila yung trabaho nila. I would encourage you to try to shift away from that behavior. Because nowadays, people don't just think of work as pay. People think of work as something more encompassing, something that means something bigger. So if we get into that rabbit hole of thinking, dapat gawin na lang nila kasi binabayaran sila, we run the risk of not being able to keep up with the new perspectives, the new mindsets, and the new attitudes that employees are going to come in with. All right? And I know it's not easy. It's not easy to change those mindsets and perceptions, but bit by bit, we can do our best to create corporations, organizations, companies that will be a place for people to realize their purpose, contribute to society, and yes, get to their goals, whether it's financial, mental, physical, etc. Right? So, we have finished talking about the insights that we need to be thinking about at work. Now, in the next few slides, as we wrap up our webinar before we open up for Q&A, I want to share with you actions, specific actions that you can look into as HR professionals. But before that, let me know in the chat, as HR professionals, or for some of you who are people managers, what skills do you think would you need to focus on for 2023? Okay, digital, technical. How about for the others? What are those skills that you're thinking about enrolling in or you'd want to enroll in? Digital, tech, comms, change management, comms. Perfect. Okay. So all of those are very much relevant. Let's kick it off with our HR actions for 2023. Now, I don't want to give you generic things like build up your L&D or pay attention to D&I. So you're not going to see any of those here. What I want to do is give you specific steps that you can take. It might seem small and common sense, but sometimes the hardest thing to do are the most common sense things to do. And so let's talk about them. First, upskill in data and communications. 2, invest in leadership development. 3, go from employee experience to employee participation. 4, get your basics right. And 5, show a roadmap for the future. Let's discuss the first one. Upskill in data and communication. A lot of you said this actually. Why is that important? That's important because both of these skills are leading towards more participation in business critical decisions. We've heard this a lot in the past. HR, we need a seat at the table. Or HR, you need business acumen. I'm sure narinig nyo na yan, paulit-ulit. But what allows us to have a seat at the table? What allows us to have that business acumen? It's when we have data, we can get insights from that data, and we can verbalize and communicate those insights with other people in the company. In the pandemic, a lot of organizations saw the importance of HR. Nakita naman nila, di ba, na HR yung nag-aalaga sa employees, HR yung nagme-make sure na may makakapasok, walang sakit yung mga tao, vaccinated yung mga tao, etc. A lot of companies saw the importance of our function. We have to leverage that influence into the next few years. We show them that we're not just effective during the pandemic. We show them that we have the data skills needed and the communication skills needed to actually help the company in a more strategic sense. And so what do we focus on? For data, focus on gathering data using quantitative and qualitative techniques. Quantitative techniques, meaning these are things like surveys, assessments. Quantitative, ang ibig sabihin nun, may numbers ka na makukuha. So yung numbers na yun, ma-analyze mo siya. You can get the means, the standard deviations. You can analyze it statistically, okay? Quantitative. Qualitative are more open-ended. So these are things like focus group discussions, interviews. You cannot get numbers that you can compute, but you can get very deep answers. You can probe, makukuha mo kung ano ba yung iniisip talaga ng mga tao. As HR professionals, we need to be good at gathering data using these two techniques. Also, we have to know simple statistical analysis. You don't have to be a statistician. You don't have to do the complicated things. Maybe do something like descriptive statistics. These are mga means, so yung mga averages, standard deviation, and how to explain that. Think about correlations. In a lot of our surveys, we cannot just assume that if something happens, it's because of this. We have to know the relationships between the different variables that we get. So maybe correlations, maybe a little bit of t-testing, if you can. So let me type that in the chat. T-tests. T-tests, we use them in statistics to see if there's a significant difference in the populations that we're comparing. So I would say, as HR professionals, descriptive statistics, t-tests, correlations, kahit yung basic lang na yun, kayang-kaya. At least may intindihan nyo rin when consultants come in with studies, and you can probe them about the validity of the data that they're sharing with you or the study that they're running, okay? Next up, data management. I will tell you now, it doesn't matter if the company is big or small or local or international, data management is a huge problem. How many spreadsheets do you have open for the same topic? How many tabs do you have to keep track of what work you're currently doing? How many documents do you send back and forth when you're editing a report? These are things that, because of all of these inefficiencies, we could lose important data that we need. Also, if we don't have the right databases to keep track of data, we potentially have unusable data. We can analyze all we want, but if the source of that data is not good, if it's dirty data, sometimes I like to think of it that way, if it's dirty data, you'll get dirty results. So you really have to make sure that you clean up your data management processes. For communications, focus on number 1, presenting data. I still see this, especially for HR professionals who maybe did not start in HR. Dito sa Pilipinas, common pa rin sa atin yung hindi naman talaga inaral yung HR, di ba? And okay lang yun. It's okay if you didn't go to school for HR. What matters is now you're here and you have a lot that you can do. So sometimes what I notice is people get, it's not as comfortable for people to present data, present HR data, especially in front of executives. I think that's something we need to practice. We need that presence so they see that we know our field and we have data that we can share. Another thing that we need to focus on in terms of communications is storytelling. Storytelling is the best tool that you can use for culture transformation. If you think about stories like in movies or in our TV shows, teleseries, dalang-dala yung mga tao, di ba? Stories change hearts and minds, and stories are a great way to change behavior. As HR people, we have to tell good stories so our employees know why the programs that we do are important and what the end goal is. And of course, last is, in terms of communications, we have to know how to create clarity and alignment. Basic business communication is what we're looking for here. Know how to write a good email. When I say good email, it's easy to read. Maybe there's bullet points that you use instead of paragraphs. The formatting is emphasized. It's emphasizing what's important in the email. So these are some basic things that we forget, but it's so important that we have clarity in communication. When we say alignment, we mean that we have to connect the things that we say to our mission, vision, values of the company. As HR professionals, we are the ones who need to remind people of what that mission, vision, values might be. So when we write emails that we send out to all of our employees, that's an opportunity to connect back to those mission, vision, values that we usually forget. So for example, siguro simple email lang about we have a get-together on Friday, 6 p.m. after work. O everyone, magstay kayo. May food tayo, may games, get-together. Instead of stopping there, go further and say, this is because collaboration is important for the company and we want you all to get to know each other. It's a value of the company that we are going to practice on Friday when we get together. So take it that step further, create that alignment. Okay. Number 2, invest in leadership development. Why do we do this? It's because leadership buy-in is essential for broad and deep changes in the organization. Now that we are in between, we can expect a lot of changes that are coming soon. It will be very, very hard for you to make those changes happen if your leaders are not on board. In reality, napaka-important pa rin ng role nila when it comes to making decisions in the company. The thing is, there's a gap in some of the perspectives and perceptions, especially with the kind of work environment that we have these days. So that same Microsoft Work Trend Index study, what it shows us is for employees, 87% of them report they are productive at work, whether that's in the office or at home or anywhere. But only 12% of leaders say that they are confident their employees are being productive. The researchers who did the study, they've called this productivity paranoia. Bakit? Kasi napaparanoid daw yung mga leaders na hindi nagtatrabaho, yung mga employees nila, kung hindi nila nakikita yung employee nila sa tables. There's a big disconnect there in terms of understanding. This is just an example when it comes to hybrid work and productivity. There are so many other examples of the potential disconnects. If we think about it, a lot of your leaders grew up in a different generation from the frontline employees who are usually fresh grads, younger employees, stereotypically. So nagkakaiba talaga yung pagkakaintindi nila sa mundo. when we did a study for a multinational company with an office here in the Philippines, we had a 360 assessment that we ran for their leaders. In that assessment, we saw that these are the 3 lowest ranked behaviors that leaders do, okay? The 3 behaviors are, when giving feedback to an employee, I am able to deliver feedback directly and specifically without softening the feedback. Number 2, before actually conducting a developmental meeting, I determine specifically what I want the employee to do differently and why. Number 3, when meeting with my employee, I show that I am interested and attentive through my nonverbal behaviors, such as facing the employee directly, not multitasking, etc. These are the 3 lowest ranked behaviors, meaning hindi sila masyadong ginagawa or nagagawa ng mga leaders. Let me know in the chat, what do you all think? What are some commonalities? What do you notice about these lowest ranked behaviors? Yung nanonotice nyo, what's standing out for you, maybe? What are you all thinking? Okay. All right, thank you, Landy. Maybe it's indicative of some sort of micromanagement. For Francesca, recognition could be lacking. All right, some level of authority, lack of trust. Yeah, so all of these are possible outcomes that could happen, right? If we don't address these. I want you to think about feedback and the importance of feedback. So many managers actually don't know how to give good feedback. We give feedback, but is it good feedback? There's a difference. And we have to pay attention to how we're encouraging our managers to provide that kind of feedback that will lead to true development. Also, it's about connection, right? Tama yung mga nagsabi na trust sa chat. Maybe because of the way things have changed in the way we work, there's an opportunity here to find those connections that we may have lost with our managers over the past few years of the pandemic. And so why do we invest in leadership development? We talked about leadership buy-in and how it's so important. And then we looked at the different data points that we presented on the slide. Using those data points, we know that we have to focus on, number 1, equipping leaders with knowledge from credible sources about the future and where work is going. Dahil nga may productivity paranoia or magkaiba yung pagkakaintindi nila ng mundo, magkakaiba yung perspective, we have to give people knowledge from credible sources that will help them to understand what the world is like and where the future of work is going. Sometimes it's just about lack of knowledge. It's easy for us to judge sometimes, di ba? Na, masyadong traditional lang kasi si boss or tumatanda na, hindi na siya maka-keep up. So those are stereotypes. I would suggest try to think about it as, how do you present the information in such a way that they will understand and they would want to engage with that information. Number 2, focus on helping leaders listen and build relationships with employees. Maybe help them to think of, this is how you approach your direct reports. Give them suggestions like, ano yung mga pwede nila gawin at lunch para makapag-usap sila, or remind them from time to time to have one-on-ones with their employees. As HR people, these are ways we can guide them to continue building trust. Focus on providing training on feedback and coaching. Last year, and I'm so happy about this, last year, a lot of the leadership development engagements that I did were trainings on feedback and coaching. So very happy to report na important siya for a lot of companies. And I hope it's something that continues until 2023. As an additional tip, try upward mentoring programs. Try to see if you can partner a more senior leader with a more junior employee. It's not just the senior leader who can teach that junior employee. that a junior employee can also give them tips for maybe the future of work, some digital literacy skills, and so on. So you can try those programs. It's called upward mentoring if you want to research more about it. Number 3, go from employee experience to employee participation. Why is that? Employees want meaning. And so we have to provide meaningful experiences that they want to be part of. How do we do this? First, focus on having more frequent listening systems and getting actionable insights. Usually, ang survey natin on employees once a year lang, right? That's pretty usual for companies. My suggestion is to try having shorter surveys, but maybe more frequent. Think quarterly, or when something important happens in the company, it's good to get a pulse on how they're feeling. So no need to wait for that 1-year annual survey. Next, take inventory of skills and interests that exist in your company. What do people know how to do? What are they interested in doing? Skills is going to be the currency of the future of work. And so the more you know about what skills exist in your company, the more you can kind of see how you can leverage those, and the better you can see the gaps. Para alam mo, makakompare mo siya dun sa industry. Makikita mo kung ano yung kulang, and then you can train employees on what's kulang so they can participate better. You can encourage employee resource groups, especially for advocacies and societal issues. The reality is, as organizations, as HR people, we cannot manage all of the advocacies and social issues that the company can get into. Hindi naman posible na lahat yun tayo gagawa. So you need the help of employees who are also passionate about those issues. I think this is the key here. In the past, everyone talked about employee experience and giving people a good work environment. My suggestion is to not just give them a good environment, involve them in creating that environment. That's why we want to go from employee experience to employee participation. Sila mismo yung kasama mo na pagandahin yung work environment. Sila yung kasama mo to create the future that you want for the company. All right, number 4, get your basics right. Why do we do this? Because we have to get ready for the innovations coming. Smart systems will turn stupid with bad foundations. It's just like with data, right? You can have a good analysis method, but you will get bad insights with bad data. And so same thing, smart systems will not be smart if the foundations are pretty stupid or they're not as well built. And so as early as now, we have to focus on cleaning and organizing our information. It's about data management. Number 2, put a process to tracking your accountabilities. It doesn't have to be complicated. Pay people fairly and correctly and on time. That's part of the basics that, sadly, we still see companies not doing nowadays. Okay? And then one thing you can do as HR professionals is to create guiding principles for key initiatives. Guiding principles are things like your pay philosophy. Write it down. What do you believe that the company follows in terms of how you pay people? What is the guiding principle for learning and development? What's included, what's not included? So these are things that you have to think about and write it down. Honestly, the job of HR is quite writing intensive. We don't think about it that way a lot, right? But the most successful HR leaders that I've observed in the past, they're successful because they can write down their principles and their strategies well. Hindi lang nila in-explain or ginagawa, sinusulat nila, na-represent nila sa isang slide kung ano ba yung important na guiding principles for the company. And then that becomes a document that everyone follows as a sort of guidance when they do their projects. So, inuupuan siya, which I know is not the most fun thing, but sit down, write it out, get your team together. What are the guiding principles that we believe are important for your different functions? And then number 5, show a roadmap for the future. It's important because we have to start creating a learning culture, and that's a journey. Being a learning company is one of the most sustainable ways that your company can survive and thrive in the uncertainty that we're in. It will be difficult to go on that journey if you don't have a roadmap. So what you want to do is to research trends and insights that make sense for your industry and your company. There's a lot of research out there, so please select the ones that apply to your company size, the industry you're on, and maybe the industries that you want to be on in the future. Also, sit down and strategize. Think about what are the big buckets that you want to achieve year over year. For example, if you think of learning and development, in 2023, ano yung one thing na gusto mong mangyari? If you make that happen, what will happen in 2024? If that happens, what will happen in 2025? Sometimes it's good to go through that thought exercise with your teammates and as an HR group, because that will help you identify the buckets. From there, you can start making strategies and specific plans for what are the different things you have to do to make it come to life. Strategy sounds so overwhelming, but really, if you just think about it that way, mas mapapadali yung pagplanning. Also, show how all the initiatives, big and small, work together. If you have a roadmap, you can see the graduation of the different projects and initiatives. You can see what contributes to what. Kaya kailangan yung roadmap, so it's easy to explain that to leaders and to employees. And with that, everyone, let me know in the chat. Before I give you the key takeaways and the summary, what is the one thing that you will take away for yourself? It's good to always ask ourselves, what is that one thing? So we can focus and lagi tayong may baon, kahit isa lang. What is the one thing that you will make sure to remember? And it can be a phrase, a word, a sentence. What will you make sure to remember from today? Let's see here. Agility is key. Technical skills, skills upgrade, perfect. Acting as an HR professional, pay fairly and correctly, very important. Data gathering. All right. So to summarize, today we talked about HR insights. Technology is going to be in all industries. Integration is the name of the game, and more is expected from work. Employees want companies that help them connect with others, achieve their goals, make their purpose happen, and connect with society. And then, of course, we looked at actions that we can do as HR. Number one, we want to upskill in data and communications, invest in leadership development, go from employee experience to employee participation, get your basics right, and to show a roadmap for the future. Why are there arrows connecting them? A lot of the work that we do, of course, we look at insights, we look at research to inform how we will go about that work. But at the same time, the great thing about HR is the things we learn about people and about organizations, they are never exact. And so what we discover, they become new insights that we can use for the future, and we can continue that cycle of learning as we go along. It's fun, it's difficult, but the great thing is there's opportunity to do it now, and now is the best time to go after these people practices. So with that, everyone, let me leave you with this. This is a newspaper clipping from 1923. So 𝗶𝗺𝗃𝗃 posts these on Twitter. He is a researcher from a university in California, and he looks at old newspapers to look at the predictions that people from back then make about the future. In 1923, someone said, no more hard work by 2023. Tama kaya yun? I don't know. Think about it for your own organizations. Think about it for your own self. But what I encourage you to do is to define, what is hard work anyway? Maybe what you want is work that gives people the right amount of challenge, hard in that sense, but it gives them meaning. So in that sense, no more hard work for 2023. So everyone, thank you so much. We are going to leave some minutes later for Q&A. Most of the time, people don't have a lot of questions. That's why I keep it at the end. But just for some instructions here, so that if you need to go, you can go. So please do connect with us on Facebook and on LinkedIn and on TikTok as well. But I still have to work on that more. Request for a certificate by answering the evaluation form. The link is right there in the chat. So it's the tiny URL link that you're seeing there. Let me paste that again so that everyone can see it. And then, of course, if you want to get in touch with us, I left my email address there in the chat. Please do get in touch if you have any questions or if you want to find ways to partner with your organization. All right, everyone, that is it. Thank you so much for being here. It's been so much fun getting so many questions. We try to have a free webinar every month. You can get announcements of that if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, mostly Facebook, because that's where most people are. And with that, I will see you all next month. Bye, everyone. Happy lunch. I'll see you all next month.